Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, I have a very long-awaited topic, and that is my top 5 hand cannons throughout all of Destiny 2 in Year 1. As I'm sure that many of you are already aware, Year 2 is just around the corner in September, and because of that, we also know that these hand cannons have the potential to 3-tap, and that includes weapons like the Better Devils, the DFA, and other weapons like that, as well as the ones that can already 3-tap currently as the game is now. And so what I really wanted to focus on in this video is kind of give you guys an idea and a sense as to what I believe are the best among the best hand cannons, looking at only legendary hand cannons and those alone. Keeping that in mind, I'm also focusing on weapons that are designed for console and not so much for PC. But nonetheless, I am still going to make a couple comments here and there on which hand cannons excel in PC and which ones don't. And so with all that being said, the only thing left to do is to sit back, relax, grab a bag of popcorn, and eviscerate that subscribe button, and let's jump right into the video. Before we can even get into my top 5 list, you guys have got to know my special mentions, and in this case we have 2 hand cannons, one of which is called the Criminal's Dagger from Iron Banner, and the second which is called Home for the Lost via the Gunsmith. Now the reason why the Criminal's Dagger deserves a special mention is because it has the best base range stat out of any other hand cannon in this entire game at 64 out of 100. When you couple along with this, its incredible recoil direction at 96 out of 100 and a marvelous aim assistance at 67, this thing is easily going to do well not just on PC, but also on console, and so it can easily cross-map distances, no problem whatsoever. In relationship to this particular hand cannon has a marvelous shot rhythm, and so it can land crit after crit after crit, which is exactly what you're going to need to have for this thing, because it requires exactly 3 critical headshots to attain its optimal TTK at 1.09 seconds. Now what helps this hand cannon achieve the optimal TTK is a wonderful perk called Opening Shot, and so every single time that you land that very first shot, it has increased accuracy and increased range, and so with that incredible base range stat already at 64 out of 100, that range is only going to increase, and when you couple along with this, its incredible perk called Drop Mag, you're going to get that very fast reload speed, almost allowing you to never run out of bullets, and in this case, it's very, very efficient. Similarly, the Home for the Lost hand cannon also makes a special mention list, and that's because it has the exact same TTK as the Criminal's Dagger, but more importantly, it has a very, very unique perk, and that perk is called Quick Draw. Quick Draw allows the weapon to be drawn unbelievably fast, and so it couples along beautifully with weapons like that the Fighting Lion, or the Darkest of 4, or something else like that, and so it allows the weapons to be swapped back and forth very, very efficiently, and because it's so versatile with such a wide variety of weapons, it makes a special mention list. In correlation with that, its base stats are also very, very good, even though they're not quite as good as the Criminal's Dagger. The Home for the Lost still has a great recoil direction at 93, a decent range stat at 57, and with these two things combined and the aim assistance at 61, it's got an excellent shot rhythm that can rival that of the Criminal's Dagger. As long as you guys are landing those critical headshots, these two things are not going to disappoint and easily annihilate Guardians. Starting off the top 5 list is a hand cannon from the Vanguard, and you have to get this thing by reaching rank 50 in Season 3. But once you do so, this weapon called the Service Revolver is certainly not going to disappoint, and that's because this bad boy has an optimal headshot time to kill at exactly 1.0 seconds on the money. Now what allows this weapon to achieve that is the wonderful perk that it's got, and which is called Precision Frame. And Precision Frame is ultimately going to allow the weapon to have more vertical recoil, which is the exact same thing as what Counterbalance was back in the days of Destiny 1. Taking that into account, along with the weapon's base stats, such as its recoil direction at 88, its aim assistance at 67, and its range factor at 39, along with its stability at 57, all 4 of those things are really going to give the weapon a glorious and beautiful shot rhythm that's going to allow you to land critical headshot after critical headshot to attain the optimal TTK on a much more frequent basis. Now the 2 things that this weapon lacks is a little bit of range, as like I said from before, it's only at 39 out of 100. And on top of that, its reload speed is horrendous and terrible in so many ways, especially considering the fact that this thing has a rate of fire at 180 rounds per minute, which is the fastest rate of fire hand cannon in this entire game. Luckily for us, This service revolver has a perk called Accurized Rounds, which is going to increase the weapon's range factor significantly, and on top of this, it's got an exceptional perk that I absolutely love, and that perk is called Outlaw, which is then going to reward you for getting more critical headshots, and thus give you an instantaneous reload speed, which is exactly what this weapon needs, and this R-type in general needs, because the reload speed is so unbelievably terrible, and horrendous, and garbage, and complete muff cabbage trash if you guys don't happen to get those critical headshots. After taking all these things into account, I can solidly say that this weapon right here has no weaknesses, and that's because of the very simple fact that all the weapon's base weaknesses in terms of its stats are taken care of by the weapon's perks. And so with that, this thing is easily going to decimate and obliterate Guardians as long as you're landing those critical headshots, allowing you to proc Outlaw and have this wonderful domino effect that is oh such a very good feeling. Arriving in the number 4 spot is a hand cannon that I'm sure that many of you are already familiar with, as this thing was the most dominant hand cannon throughout all of Season 1 in Destiny 2, and that hand cannon's from the Crucible called the Better Devils. As I'm sure that many of you already know, the most pivotal weakness about all hand cannons is their damage falloff, and with this hand cannon it's no exception, as this thing only has a range stat at 46 out of 100. However, the spectacular characteristic about this particular hand cannon is that it's got a perk called Explosive Payload, and Explosive Payload is going to allow the one bullet and all the other bullets following it to do a radial damage effect. And so what this essentially means is that regardless of whichever kind of range engagement that you happen to be at, whether you're right in front of their face, or whether you're cross-map distances, or even if you happen to hit them in the pinky toe, this thing is always going to do at least 23 points of damage in correlation with the other damage from the bullet itself. What this allows for is for a wide variety of playstyles, and at the exact same time, you're always going to have that consistent damage of 23 points at every single range possible, and so you can even use this to shoot around corners and prevent Guardians from regenerating their health, even if they only happen to get tagged for 1 point of damage, as that's still then going to allow you to chase them down and then completely decimate that Guardian. Another exceptional trait about the Better Devils is that this thing has an optimal headshot time to kill at 1.3 seconds. And although you might be thinking, well, that's a little bit high, in all honesty, you're right. But the good news is that all it requires is 2 critical headshots and 2 body shots to actually achieve this overall TTK. Basically what that means is that this weapon is very, very lenient, and when you combine it with the fact that it's got that incredible range via Explosive Payload, this thing is definitely going to come in handy in a wide variety of cases. And in conjunction with that, the weapon has an excellent recoil direction at 88 out of 100, a marvelous aim assistance at 75, and a great stability factor at 48, which is then going to give you a very, very reliable and overall consistent shot rhythm to land many of those critical headshots and body shots to attain this optimal TTK. Because of this weapon's reliability and its ease of use, and the fact that it's got one of the best range considerations due to Explosive Payload, this thing is going to absolutely eradicate Guardians and make it so that regardless of whichever kind of range engagement you happen to find yourself in, this thing is easily going to have you covered, and that I can guarantee. Appearing in the number 3 spot is a hand cannon that you can only find during the Nightfall, and I can't remember exactly which Nightfall that it is, but nonetheless, that hand cannon is called a DFA. If you guys happen to like the Better Devils, then rest assured, you're also going to like the DFA. And that's because this bad boy not only has the exact same sound that the Better Devils makes, but on top of that, it's got very, very similar stats in terms of its recoil direction at 88 out of 100, has a glorious aim assistance at 77, and a very good base range stat at 50, and on top of that, it's even got an excellent stability factor at 59, allowing this weapon to have one of the best overall shot rhythms, allowing you to get many critical headshots. And the reason why that's so pivotal to understand is because this rampaging beast has a perk called Rampage. Essentially what Rampage does is it allows you to have a damage buff as soon as you get 1 kill and then go into the next kill and then to the next kill, and every single time that you do so, that damage buff is then going to increase every single time. In terms of the weapon's base damage output, it can do up to 61 points of damage in the head, but as soon as you happen to get Rampage to proc once, that damage output goes up to 67, and if you happen to get Rampage to stack twice, the damage output then goes up to 74 points of damage in the head, and that within itself is spectacular and tremendous and absolutely outstanding in every way, shape, and form that you can possibly imagine. With that base damage output of 61 points of damage in the head, it can 4-tap a Guardian just the same way that the Better Devils does, and will do so in 1.3 seconds. Now, as soon as you happen to get Rampage to proc once, this weapon's optimal headshot TTK takes only 3 bullets, and granted, it has to be every single shot to be a headshot, but nonetheless, that's then going to correlate to 0.85 seconds. Yes, my friends, you heard me right, that's less than 1 second as soon as you happen to get Rampage to proc once, and the exact same thing can also be said for whenever you get Rampage to proc twice. And so the beautiful thing about this is that I can 3-tap on a very consistent basis. But what a lot of Guardians don't know is that once again, as soon as you happen to get Rampage to proc once, this thing can actually 4-tap via body shots, as every single one of those body shots is then going to do 50 points of damage. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, alright Xander, well that sounds great, but how often am I going to be able to get Rampage to proc once, let alone twice? The wonderful thing about this hand cannon is that it's got a perk called Drop Mag, and Drop Mag is going to allow you to increase the weapon's reload speed exponentially at the cost of losing a little bit of the weapon's ammunition. This is a very fair trade-off because you're going to burn through bullets extremely fast, and so if you want to be able to proc Rampage from one Guardian to the next, then Drop Mag is an absolute must, and it's going to allow you to do that to a T. The only other thing left to say is that make sure that you guys grind that Nightfall and get this monstrosity, because this thing is certainly going to become a rampaging Hulk. Inserting itself in the number 2 spot is a hand cannon that you can only get from the gunsmith, and just like its name suggests, it has a very nice western theme to it, and it's called the Old Fashioned. The main primary reason as to why this particular hand cannon makes the number 2 spot is because of one perk and one perk alone, and that perk is called Kill Clip. Essentially what Kill Clip allows you to do is as soon as you happen to get 1 kill and optimal TTK at 1.3 seconds, the weapon can then 3-tap by only having 1 critical headshot and 2 body shots to once again achieve an optimal headshot TTK that is just the same as the DFA at 0.85 seconds. After taking a look at all the other hand cannons throughout this entire game, I can say with 110% certainty that this Old Fashioned is by all means the one that feels the most as if it's a hand cannon back in Destiny 1. Thus, if you guys happen to like weapons like the Palindrome or the Ice Luna, or maybe even a Finalis Peril back in the days of Destiny 1, then this Old Fashioned is definitely going to be the hand cannon that you guys are going to love, because this thing can still 3-tap just the same way that those hand cannons used to back in the day. Now the very next thing that you guys gotta know about this particular hand cannon is that it's got some very good base stats, the most notable of which is the weapon's recoil direction at 95 out of 100. However, it's got some other very good base stats, and that includes the weapon's aim assistance at 65, a decent stability factor at 55, and a moderate range factor at 44. On top of that, it's just got a mediocre reload speed at only 49 out of 100. And so of all these base stats, the weapon's range at 44 and the reload at 49 is by all means the most weakest of all these base stats. But the good news for us is that this weapon has 2 perks that you guys can choose from to obviously increase the weapon's range via accurized rounds or to increase the weapon's reload speed via Drop Mag. If you want to increase that weapon's damage output at longer distances, then accurized rounds is definitely the way to go. But if you want to be able to proc Kill Clip more frequently, then you may want to consider using Drop Mag, as that's going to give you that significant increase in reload speed, thus allowing you to get very high damage output and get that 3-tap more frequently with Kill Clip and Drop Mag combined. However you want to use this weapon is entirely up to you, but once again, this thing is in the number 2 spot because of its lethality, but also because of its versatility and the way in which you guys want to run this thing. So whatever that might be, one thing's for sure, and that's this Old Fashioned is going to emancipate Guardians, freeing them from their ghosts. At long last, we have finally reached the number 1 spot out of all my top 5 hand cannons, and this sleek beauty is called the Midnight Coup. Now before we go any further, I have no doubt in my mind that many of you are thinking, what the heck are you talking about, Xander? Are you lost your mind? And to you, my friends, I say no, I haven't lost my mind, as the second weapon that's also tied in this spot is the Dire Promise. But let me explain a little bit more as to why I believe that the Dire Promise is more suited for the PC version of this game, whereas the Midnight Coup was more suited for the console version of this game, and so let's jump right into it. What you guys have to understand about console and PC is that console is more reliant on perks, whereas PC is more reliant on base stats. And that's because on PC, the only thing that you really need to worry about is landing those critical headshots because you have a keyboard and mouse. Thus, the Dire Promise is much more reliable in this case, not only because it has the best overall base stats, but it also has a perk called Triple Tap. And Triple Tap is going to allow you to land one bullet back into the magazine after you land 3 critical headshots. Because you're using keyboard and mouse on PC, you're much more likely to then prod Triple Tap, allowing you to not have to reload nearly as much as you might have to with that of the Midnight Coup. As far as the Midnight Coup goes, its base stats are just as good but just a little bit weaker than that of the Dire Promise. However, I believe that the weapon's perks of Rampage along with Outlaw are much more beneficial, at least in the console version of this game, and that's because it's all about getting the fastest TTK, and with Rampage, the Midnight Coup can easily do so. Having said that, I am a huge fan of the Midnight Coup because not only does it have the perks that I just mentioned, but they have a glorious and marvelous and absolutely exceptional symbiotic relationship which allows them to work so fluidly from one perk into the next. As soon as you happen to get 1 kill via Rampage, you then can have Outlaw, and what this is then going to allow you to do is have another 12 rounds back into the magazine, and thus you're going to be able to proc Rampage twice much more easily because you're going to have many more bullets into the magazine. As soon as you happen to get 1 more critical headshot, Outlaw is going to give you that instantaneous reload speed again, and thus you guys can see as to why Rampage and Outlaw have this glorious and phenomenal symbiotic relationship that makes this weapon an absolute powerhouse, at least in the console version. Looking solely at the base damage output of the Midnight Coup, this thing already has a faster TTK than the old-fashioned or the DFA, as those things are at 1.3, but the Midnight Coup is at 1.2 seconds, and so in this regard, it's obviously better. Now when you happen to proc Rampage, this optimal headshot time to kill gets even better, because as soon as you happen to do so, it's going to do 66 points of damage in the head, and then that's then going to correlate to a 0.8 optimal headshot TTK. With the Midnight Coup, this thing has an aim assistance at 90 out of 100. Yes, my friends, I said 90 out of 100, followed by a recoil direction at 80, and just a mediocre range factor at 37, but a pretty nice stability factor at 46, and a superb handling at 64. With all those things being pretty darn high, that ultimately means that this thing has another glorious shot rhythm, allowing you to land those critical headshots, thus proccing Outlaw, thus proccing Rampage, and still gives you another very easy chance of getting that nice and juicy, crispy 3-tap. Regardless of whichever hand cannon that you guys use, one thing's for certain, and that is that the enemy team is going to be a little bit salty. Ladies and gents, there you have it, and I hope you enjoyed this top 5 hand cannons list of what I believe are all the best ones through all of Year 1 in Destiny 2. Starting off the countdown, we had our special mentions or honorable mentions, and that included the Criminal's Dagger along with the Home for the Lost. After that, we had the top 5 list itself, which consisted of the Service Revolver, followed by the Better Devils, then came the DFA, and of course the Old Fashioned, followed by the number 1 spots for both PC and console, and that's the Dire Promise on PC, and the Midnight Coup on console. Now knowing my top 5 list, I'm very intrigued to hear your guys' top 5, and whether or not you would agree with this assessment and all the reasons that I gave, as well as the other assessments that you guys give, as you guys know that I'm always open to more analyses and reasoning and logic behind that, and I know for a fact that you guys are going to list that stuff down in the comment section below. And once you do so, I can't wait to see exactly what you guys say, as you know, I'm going to read all those comments. Lastly, go ahead and check out some of my other new videos, as you guys can see right there on the screen. If you happen to enjoy this one, then you're definitely going to enjoy those as well. That's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now, and so as always, Deislayers, great gaming, until next time.